The United States entered World War II in 1941 as the result of a long buildup of global tensions, economic interests, ideological conflicts, and finally a direct military attack that made neutrality impossible. Throughout the 1930s, the U.S. officially followed a policy of isolationism, shaped by the heavy losses of World War I and the Great Depression, with most Americans believing that involvement in another European or Asian war would be disastrous. However, while neutral on paper, the U.S. was deeply connected to global affairs. In Europe, Nazi Germany under Adolf Hitler was aggressively expanding, invading Poland in 1939, then rapidly conquering much of Western Europe, while Italy joined the Axis cause. In Asia, Imperial Japan had already invaded Manchuria in 1931 and launched a full-scale war against China in 1937, committing widespread atrocities. These actions threatened the balance of power and directly endangered American economic and strategic interests. The U.S. economy was tied to global trade, and instability in Europe and Asia risked cutting off markets, raw materials, and sea routes vital to American prosperity. Ideologically, the rise of fascist regimes posed a challenge to democratic values. Leaders like President Franklin D. Roosevelt increasingly viewed the conflict as a struggle between democracy and authoritarianism. While many Americans were reluctant to fight, sympathy for Britain, China, and other nations resisting Axis aggression steadily grew. As Germany expanded, the U.S. began providing material support to the Allies through policies like the Lend-Lease Act of 1941, which allowed the U.S. to supply weapons, food, and equipment to countries whose defense was deemed vital to American security, especially Great Britain after France fell. This aid effectively aligned the U.S. with the Allies, even though it was not yet officially at war. In the Atlantic, American naval vessels began escorting Allied ships and clashed indirectly with German U-boats, making conflict increasingly likely. In the Pacific, tensions with Japan escalated sharply as the U.S. opposed Japan's expansion into China and Southeast Asia. To pressure Japan, the U.S. imposed economic sanctions, including freezing Japanese assets and cutting off exports of oil and steel, resources essential for Japan's military and industrial survival. From Japan's perspective, these sanctions were an existential threat, forcing its leaders to choose between retreating from conquered territories or securing resources by force. Japan chose war, secretly planning a surprise attack to neutralize the U.S. Pacific Fleet. On December 7, 1941, Japan launched a devastating air attack on Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, destroying battleships, killing over 2,400 Americans, and shocking the nation. This single event transformed public opinion overnight. Isolationism collapsed as Americans saw the attack as a direct assault on their homeland and sovereignty. The next day, President Roosevelt famously called it a date which will live in infamy and asked Congress to declare war on Japan, which it did almost unanimously. Within days, Germany and Italy, honoring their alliance with Japan, declared war on the United States, and the U.S. responded in kind, fully entering World War II on both the European and Pacific fronts. In essence, the U.S. entered World War II because it could no longer protect its security, economic interests, or democratic ideals through neutrality alone. Years of global aggression by Axis powers, increasing American involvement in aiding the Allies, mounting economic and military tensions, and finally the direct attack on Pearl Harbor made war unavoidable. By 1941, the conflict had become global, and the United States concluded that its own survival and the future world order depended on active participation rather than standing aside.